Hello, I'm Rick Stivers. I'd like to welcome you to YoungMartin'sReels. Today, we're going to be working on this South Bend Big Fish. Now, this reel is going to be a fail right before we start because it has a broken plastic switch right here. It's got two little wings in it that are supposed to hold it in position, and they don't. And switch, I don't know where to find one. I haven't been able to find one. And that switch activates the direct drive in this fishing reel, which is the unique feature of this fishing reel. This reel is made so that you can adjust your drag using your drag, but then when you've got that really big fish on, I guess that's why it's called Mr. Big Fish, when you got that really big fish on and you don't want the drag to be operating anymore and you just want to horse him in, you can flip your switch to direct drive, and when you do, it bypasses the drag system in the reel and goes direct drive only, and it's either you, the fish, or the line. Something's got to give, and that's what it's designed for. I might still call this a non-fail by painting over the direct drive and removing the switch or gluing it closed or something. This reel will function perfectly well as a regular fishing reel. It just won't be the Mr. Big Fish direct drive that it's set up to be. So it will still operate as a normal drag operated reel. So anyway, we're gonna go ahead and take this apart and see what we can do with it. It was really stiff when I first got it, and I've tinkered and played with it a little bit, just shooting a little WD-40 in it here and there, and I've gotten it to loosen up quite a bit, but it needs some real TLC. It really needs to be taken apart, get the old grease out of it, and lubricate it. So that's what we're going to do today. We're going to take this reel apart, try to get it apart. It's got an central axle system that doesn't want to pull out except if you disassemble it and take the spring off of it. And I'm not real crazy about doing that. I hate taking the springs apart on these like this. If it's got a C-clip, that's one thing, but this one doesn't. This just has the squished on spring on the center, on the axle shaft. And if you take that apart, every time you take it apart, it makes it more and more likely that it's going to be able to come off later by itself. So I really hate to take that apart, but I think we're going to for this video. So here we are, Mr. Big Fish, by South Bend, and let's get started. All right, the first thing we're gonna do is take off the cover, front cover, and we're going to unscrew the spinner head off of here by holding the handle and turning it counterclockwise. That took that off. All right, we're going to now pop off this E-clip that holds the spool on, and I just shot it across the room. I keep telling you guys, be careful of that, and then I go and do exactly what I tell you not to do. All right, C-clip removed, or E-clip. We're gonna slide this off. Okay, now this has an entirely different drag system than I have seen in pretty much anything else. We've got these two washers, and they're not really drag washers. That is not their purpose in life. They simply act to allow this to spin easily. Okay, these are not operating as the drag on this reel. One goes on the top and one goes on the bottom. Okay, the drag in this is operated right here. All right, this big ring right here fits up inside this spool right here. And as you adjust the drag tighter and tighter, what it does is it pulls this pin down in between, and it spreads these two halves open like this. And as it spreads them open, that tightens them tighter and tighter and tighter inside the spool here. And that's what your drag is on this reel. Okay? Now, if you look right here, you're going to see a little arm, or a little, almost like an anti-reverse pawl. Okay, that fits into these cogs on your spool right here. And what that does is when you switch this over to direct drive, it locks that tooth into those teeth and locks your spool so that the drag is no longer functional. That's what the direct drag is, or direct drive. It locks that spool so that it can't rotate anymore. All right, we're going to take this out, the drag assembly. We're going to lift it out of there like so. Okay, and there's no reason to take this any further apart than what it is. Take that spring off, but if you needed to, you could take that off and hook it back up later. Okay, but this is your drag, and it fits, I'm going to show you, right up inside there like that. And as it spreads, it puts more and more tension on that spool, locking it in place. That is your drag. Now, if we were to take this and disable it altogether so that it couldn't come forward, which is what happens when the switch is in the up position, okay, it's in drag mode. Okay, when it's like that, it disables it. What we could do is remove this, and that would put it in normal drag operating mode, or we could glue the switch up like this so that it can't drop down, and it would leave it in normal operating drag. The way it is, it always falls back down because it's broken, and when it drops down, it puts it into direct drive mode all the time, so this reel has no drag as long as that's operating. Next thing let's do, let's go ahead and take the handle off. I think that's going to be a 10. That was correct. Okay, let's slide the rear case off. All right, I'm going to go ahead and take this switch apart right here so you can see what's actually broken. All this does is hold the switch in. Now, take the switch out. Now, this switch, if you look at it, okay, it just simply moves back and forth, and when it moves back and forth, that little part right there moves that switch right there in and out. That's all it does. Okay, let's see if I can find all the pieces to this. There's supposed to be 2 of these little wings right here, and these wings are supposed to be attached right here to the switch, and they act on these little bumpers in here to lock this into position, so that when you slide it and lock in and out of position, that's what it does. But those 2 tabs have broken off, so there's no way to lock this into position. All right, so that's what you have. All right, if you've got a good switch and that's not broken, we're going to continue on as though that were the case. Let's go ahead and remove this screw out of the way and get this piece out of the way. All right, put all that together. I'm trying to decide what we're going to do about that. If we're going to take it out, leave it off, what are we going to do? I'm not real sure. Thinking about reversing this, trying to reverse the spring around so it holds it in drag mode all the time. I have to think about it. All right. In the meantime, we're going to come over to this side. And what we want to do is we want to remove this axle. Unfortunately, I don't believe we're going to get this axle to come up out of there, because if you look, it's too long, it's too wide. This gear right here is going to be snagging up underneath of the main gear, keeping it from being able to come out. So what we're going to have to do, the only way that we're going to be able to take this apart is if we get this spring to come apart right here and lift out over the top of this. It's a very bad thing to do to these. They don't like it. It has a tendency to stretch them, and I hate to do it, but this one is so stiff that if it's ever going to work again, it's going to have to come apart. I've tried activating the axle shaft and putting WD-40 down inside there and regular oil, trying to loosen it up. No joy. All right, so what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and take this spring off. There. Okay, we got it to pop off. Now with the spring off, the axle will pull out through the front, like so. Okay, as it's coming out, we'll go ahead and get these in order as they come off. There's going to be your pinion gear, your anti-reverse pawl, or lever, okay? Your anti-reverse gear, or clutch, cog, whatever you wish to call that, and then your axle shaft, okay? And that's just old grease that's holding that so tight. Now, let's see, okay, and we're still very tight in our turning. So the problem isn't so much with the axle shaft as it is here with our main gear. So now let's go ahead and slide our main gear out. All right. And I think that's good enough. These two pieces here are riveted on. We can, if you so desire, let's go ahead and do it just because somebody will have done it. Let's go ahead and take this off. Okay, now there's a spring under here. This is spring loaded, so go ahead and put your finger on top of it to hold it down while you go ahead and take this last screw out. And then ease this up. Okay, there's that assembly, or plate, and this spring. And there's another spring inside here, small spring. And I'm going to assume that this will unscrew off of here. Could be wrong. Okay, that is a locking plate right there. Right there, that is a locking plate. And I don't want to damage it, so I don't think we're going to take it any further than what we've got right there. And if you look, there's a little tab right there. And that tab is locked in right there. And that's holding that in place on there, keeping it from coming the rest of the way. So, since I don't really want to break it, I think we're going to stop at that point. Okay. And we'll scrub it up from there. It moves very freely, so I don't really think we're going to need to do anything worse than that. So there are all the parts of the Mr. Big Fish. There's our drag. Unfortunately, we have this broken switch, and I have not been able to locate one anywhere. You may want to notice, can you see it? I don't know if you can see all the grit and sand that's down inside this thing, so we're going to have to kind of clean that up. There is a bearing right here, our main, ooh, and it doesn't want to turn. There it goes. Okay, let's go ahead and put some penetrating oil into that bearing. And we'll go ahead, give all these parts here a shot of WD-40 for cleaning. And I am going to make a note here. I got another email this week from somebody requesting that I use PB Blaster instead of WD-40. And while I grant you that PB Blaster probably is a very good cleaner, I can't tolerate the smell of it. So if you guys wish to use PB Blaster, by all means do so. I'm never going to try to tell you not to. All I'm telling you is that please don't ask me to use it because I can't take the smell of it. It's just a little too strong for my indoor workshop. All right, so we're going to go to cleaning, and I'll get back to you in a minute with clean parts. All right, we're back with nice clean parts again, and we're ready to assemble the Mr. Big Fish, and I'm still trying to decide what to do about this lever. All right, I've made a command decision. Rather than send this reel off to the junkyard, I've decided to disable the direct drive feature permanently if I can get this out of here. And I'm going to do that by removing the lever, the locking lever. There we go. All right, the locking lever is now permanently removed from the Mr. Big Fish. So, let's begin by reinstalling this assembly over here. Remember, we had a small washer, or small spring on the top. Then we had our large spring and a lot of sand. We removed all of that. Okay. And then that's going to slip on back over. That center post right there is for that shaft to go through. And then your 2 screws go in here. And this is your adjustment for your drag that we have now permanently enabled. Okay, we're going to adjust that so that post, we're going to adjust that so that post is at its maximum height up. Okay, so it's going to be going that direction right there. That brings that post to its maximum point. We're going to leave it right there. And we're going to go back over here to this side. And we are going to install the main gear. That's this guy. And it looks like it has a shim washer, but it doesn't. Okay, we're going to oil the main gear. And let's go ahead and oil the bushing that it fits into. Slide it in. Oh, and now it moves so much freer. Okay. Matter of fact, look at that. Before, you had to forcibly turn it. Next thing is going to be reassembling this axle, which is never fun when you've got this type. So let's go ahead, oil the axle shaft, and let's oil our shielded bearing. It's not a sealed bearing, it's a shielded bearing. And let's go ahead and put oil in the bushing for the axle shaft. Oh, that doesn't go that way, sorry. And slide the axle shaft back in. Now, if you need something for the axle shaft to sit against, you can go ahead and do this. You can go ahead and screw the axle shaft onto the front rotor. All right. With that axle shaft screwed to your rotor, now it's easier to slide this down. Okay, once you've got it slid down, it's time to put your ratchet back on for your anti-reverse. Lift this up and slide that in onto the flat. If you're not on the flat, rotate it around until you get to the flat. It's easier to find the flat first. There we go. There, like that. Now notice the direction that this goes on. That way, your anti-reverse, this is your anti-reverse, and when this tries to reverse, it can kick in like that. All right, when it's not anti-reversing, it'll just continue to spin like this. Okay. Next, we're going to put on our anti-reverse lever. This comes on, it goes down here and slides onto that pin right there. Okay, that's how it goes. Rotate this around till you get the flat towards you. And now it's time to find the flat on your pinion gear. Lift this up so that you can get your pinion gear in. Line it up with the flats on the axle shaft. Yeah. There. Okay. Make sure to grease this axle shaft. Go ahead, put you some grease on it. Slide it up and down a few times there so that grease will get on the pinion gear really nicely. All right, and then comes the part that everybody sweats, and it's for good reason, because you've got to get this on there and get it to stay. This is our spring assembly. We're going to slide it down, and then we're going to start working it down. And it went right on. Question is it going to stay on? What I tend to like to do is bring the end of the spring around to the flat like that. Okay, I don't know how well you can see it, but that's got the end of the spring on the flat. And then I'll take my needle nose and I'll squish that just a little bit. And then I'm going to rotate the spring around so that the end of the spring is no longer in the flat, it's over on the curved side. Okay. Now we're going to gently and sparingly grease this main gear. And a little bit more on our pinion. And then we're going to put some on this shaft where the spring slides up and down. Like so. And then as we rotate this, notice that we don't have the grease everywhere. But when we rotate this around, that pinion is going to spread that grease the rest of the way. And now we have a nice even coat of grease all the way around, and we can take that excess off because that's not doing anybody any good. All right. Let's go ahead and unscrew the rotor. And let's put a drop of oil here, and a drop of oil here, and a drop of oil in there, like so, and let's put another one right there. Okay. That's got all of the major points lubricated, everything it's going to have to move. And now, this is how the anti-reverse works. Okay, there's your anti-reverse. And when you flip it over here, that's your anti-reverse override, and that keeps it from going into anti-reverse. Flip it back, and everything works as advertised. Let's unscrew the rotor, take it back off, and let's reassemble the front side. Well, let's go ahead and slide the back on. Everything back here that we needed to do is done. Let's go ahead and slide that back on. Like so. Okay. All right. Now we're going to come back and we're going to install this drag mechanism. Okay, if you look very closely at the end of this, you'll see that this is ramped. Okay, that's so that when this pulls down in here, it spreads those ramps out and tightens it up. Okay, so the ramp goes to the top, like so. All right, without that lever in there, now if you still had that lever in there, what you've got to do is put this into direct drive mode off in order to get your rotor to go back on, or spool to go back on. All right, now make sure that you've got this adjusted all the way to the negative as far as it'll go. With that like that, set it to the center, as close to the center as you can get it. And what we're going to do is we're going to take a small amount of drag washer grease and lubricate the inside edge of this gear. Now we don't have to put anything on this part right here. None of that needs it. The only place it's going to need any is right along this edge right here, because that's what your drag rides inside. That plastic circle rides in there. Make sure you're stayed centered. Slide this on, rotate it around a little bit. There. Oh, missing a part. Put our Teflon washer inside so that it's got something to slide on. There we go. Slide your next Teflon washer on. And the C-clip that I shot across the room, let's put it back on. Like so. All right, there's your drag, which is practically none. Okay, now let's take it to positive. And it's getting tighter, tighter, very tight. And basically, that's effectively the same as your direct drive. You've tightened it down so much that there's no way the fish is going to pull it out. So I think this is a perfectly fishable reel, just like it is, except that it's going to have a small hole in the side right here, which I guess we could epoxy closed, but I think it's all right. We're going to put a little bit of grease up under here for our rotor. And I'm going to help that out by putting a drop of oil here and a little bit underneath. There we go. Let's go ahead, screw that on. Get it pretty snug. Now, let's see if we can get a piece of the line out. I'm going to clean that rust off there in a few minutes, but let's see how well this thing's going to work. Okay. Well, suck the line all the way in. And the only reason I'm bringing it back out is I want to see what the drag feels like. I'm going to strip this line off of here. It's a nice big line, which I think this reel is made for. All right. tighten the drag down some more. Wow, got good drag. All right. So, see if the anti-reverse works. It does. Flip the anti-reverse off. Good, that works. Back on. Okay. There you have the South Bend Mr. Big Fish direct drive, which is no longer direct drive. It does have a hole in the side here, and I would probably want to sand that on-off direct drive off of there and maybe put some epoxy over it. I don't know. But it works great as a regular drive operated or drag operated fishing reel. It just can't stop itself anymore. What parts did I remove? Okay, I removed the switch cover, the screw that held them, the one arm here portion of the switch, the catch for the direct drive, the spring, and the post that held that. Those are the parts that have been removed from this reel. And in my humble opinion, I think it might even be a better reel for it. So there you have the Mr. Big Fish by South Bend. If I've offended someone by modifying the reel, sorry. It needed it. It was either that or it goes to the parts bin. If you like this video, hey, hit the like button. If you'd like to see more videos like this, hit the subscribe button. For now, that's Rick Stivers with Young Martin's Reels, signing out.